Half my skull gets caved in. This is depressing. Nobody's in the room.
They are. They're all here to see you.
Where are they? Where can I see them?
If you look under attendees
Uh-huh.
on the side, you can see
Attendees.
names in there.
Where? Panel.
Susan Dewey's even in here for you,
Hey.
Ryan.
Click on participants at the bottom, Ryan.
Oh, and I have to scroll. They're not going to pop up like a.
Right.
Wait a minute. I'm still not getting it like a. I see you guys.
You see panelist?
Yeah, all panelists, and I see all panelists and attendees. But I'm not getting anything.
You should, next to your start video, the chat, there's participants.
Start video, great. Of all the things, oh, there it is. We did that already. Okay, I'm not very good. Can they hear me? Are y'all hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you. They're hearing you. So you should go ahead and start.
Well, wait a minute. All right, well, I wanted to see who everybody was. All right, I guess we're gonna start. Everybody understands out there in the audience that we can see you. So Alex, I can see you eating that sandwich, just in case you're wondering. But no, I want to have some kind of audience participation. So don't forget to ask questions for you guys. I see we do have a lot of people. We're pretty popular, guys. This is going to be a financing discussion. We're going to talk about financing options. We've got 3 panelists here: David Glassman, Sherry Davis, and the great Ed Delaney, without an E at the end. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start with David Glassman and go over VHDA, and then we'll work through. If anybody has any questions, please just type them up there. We'll break in. We'll ask them questions in the middle of their session, and let's get started. David Glassman, you can introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is David Glassman, and I serve as one of 2 lending group managers coordinating a team of analysts and development officers for Virginia Housing's multifamily financing. Most people probably in this session are familiar with Virginia Housing, or maybe more by our old name, the Virginia Housing Development Authority. So that has been among the other challenges that 2020 has presented. Getting used to a new name has been chief among them. So going forward, and I'll ask Ryan to keep track, $10 to the Virginia Housing Alliance every time I mess up and use our old name. So you can just give me my total at the end if I slip. Briefly, Virginia Housing's mission is helping Virginians attain quality, affordable housing, and we do that by supporting affordable housing in a variety of ways, including programs targeted to help first-time home buyers, community outreach efforts to support housing-related nonprofits and localities in their affordable housing efforts, and also administering the Housing Choice Voucher Program in Virginia. Probably more near and dear to those attending this conference, Virginia Housing is involved in rental housing as Virginia's allocating agency for the Housing Tax Credit Program, and also as an active lender on multifamily projects throughout the Commonwealth. So that's a little bit about us. Sherry?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Sherry Davis. I'm a Senior Vice President with Highland Commercial Mortgage. We are an approved multifamily MAP lender through FHA. We are actually a boutique lender that has been nationally recognized in the industry as one of the first approved MAP lenders specializing entirely on FHA transactions. So we're a niche lender who specializes in FHA transactions, which happens to pair very well with affordable projects, specifically with the low-income housing tax credit programs. We provide complete services to finance affordable housing projects in a timely and cost-efficient manner. We realize that affordable housing transactions involve both the debt and equity sources of funds and require, a different type of analysis and coordination amongst all the different parties, and are very familiar with these types of transactions and have worked on many of them throughout the years. and including the mortgages with tax exempt bonds and low income housing tax credits, historic tax credits, new market tax credits, and various other government programs that we see with the subordinated loans and grants with our transactions. So we understand that these transactions can be very complex and have a great team of originators, underwriters, closers who can take you from beginning to end on these types of transactions. Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sherry. Ed Delaney, I manage the debt and equity originations for Capital One's Community Finance Group in the Mid-Atlantic, with primary responsibility for development and preservation of affordable housing in Virginia, Maryland, and DC. Capital One's a top 10 bank, and Community Finance is a top 10 affordable housing lender and the 4th largest investor of low-income housing tax credits in the US. The top 3 LIHTC investors are all mega banks, so we like to say we punch above our weight. In addition to LIHTC, we also invest in historic tax credits, solar credits, and new markets tax credits. For debt, Community Finance provides balance sheet, construction, and permanent loans for 9% and 4% tax-exempt loans or bonds, as well as FHA, Freddie Mac, and Fannie Mae executions through our affiliate. Our sister group, Capital One Community Impact and Investment, provides grants and loans to nonprofit partners for capacity building, financial education, and resident services. Oh, and we do credit cards. Ryan?
All right. Sorry I blinked out there. My cat came in right before this conference. He's never in my office, and he decided he wanted to leave the room. I shut the door right as you guys started talking. So he's gone now. David, why don't you get started doing your presentation, and then remember, anybody in the audience, I see most of the audience here. Susan must have made all the staff at VHDA attend your session, but we do have a lot of other people in here. It's nice to see all the names I know. All right, David, go ahead.
So Ryan suggested I kick off with just sort of a high-level overview of our housing loan programs. Our loan programs include both taxable and tax-exempt bond financing. So on the taxable side, that includes both construction to perm and perm-only loans. These are what we often pair with the 9% tax credits, although we also have a very active mixed income lending program that provides a broader range of affordability as well. So on the tax-exempt bond side, all of those loans are in fact construction to perm. And in all those cases, actually, from a policy standpoint, right now we have those deals paired with 4% credits. Our loans are all non-recourse, fully amortizing loans. Something that sets VHDA apart, I think, and I credit Fred Bryant with this phrase, but we are cradle to grave. So we are handling the loan from intake all the way, through closing and servicing. And that's everything from our own underwriting staff, our own design and construction review, our own legal staff to close the loans, our own inspectors to inspect during constructions, all the way through compliance, asset managing, and servicing. So we're a self-insured lender. We don't rely on outside mortgage insurance or other credit enhancements. And so what that paired with the sort of cradle to grave description allows us to do, is really have a lot of flexibility because, absent the IRS code rules, we can make a lot of decisions in-house. We can do it relatively quickly, which is important in making these challenging deals work. I guess one thing I would highlight, obviously, this has been a year of change and challenge for a lot of different reasons. Those of you who are familiar with our tax-exempt financing know that we have always bundled those deals and usually gone to market 4 to 5 times a year with a group of deals packaged together. And we all use the analogy of sort of being on the train, hitting certain milestones, having the loan commitment accepted, site plan approval, all sorts of other things in place in order to be included in a particular bond offering. And that can be a challenge because if you miss one of those deadlines, you sort of have to wait for the next train to hit the station. And because of the interruptions experienced in capital markets, impacting, essentially the corporate bond world, which is more analogous to our taxable debt. We have in 2020 moved our taxable loans, so the loans we would use on a 9% credit deal, over to a similar deal or a similar program where we are, in fact, bundling deals and go into market with a specific group of deals in mind. And so that has been a little bit challenging, both for us internally, but also for our customers who are used to working with us under the more flexible pricing guidelines. So, we hope as things look to normalize in 2020 that we can shift back. But I thought I would just mention when talking about our loan programs, that's been a hopefully temporary change that we've had for 2021.
Hey, David, you just told me something I didn't know. That change is temporary with the taxable bonds.
Well, we hope so.
Okay.
Our capital markets folks are watching conditions, and our hope is, obviously there are a lot of things that impact capital markets right now. Folks are certainly watching the pandemic. We've had an election like no other. So I think, again, we're just looking for the dust to settle to where we can be more confident in making the financial decisions that need to be made if we lock rate between bond pricing.
Okay. And I know I shouldn't ask this question, but as a VHA mortgage broker, is it just me or do other people miss the deadlines on their deals? Because I don't think I've had a deal make it go in on the day we put in the app and end up in the same issue that it was supposed to be in.
Every deal I've worked on, everybody made it, Ryan, but yours.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks a lot.
So thanks. And that would have been a great plant question, but if you walk away from this session from a VHDA stand, that's $10. If you walk away with nothing else, I think a deadline is just that, right? That's the last possible day that we think you have a shot if you get your application and plans in by that point. That's not, hey, if you get your application and plans in by that point, you're guaranteed. There's a lot that has to happen once the application comes in. I think people would be well served to think about turning in work early. It's not summer reading. You don't have to wait till the last minute. I think that's important.
Yeah, I tell people all the time to make sure that they probably won't end up in the issue they think they're going to be in, and they need to have all their stuff in as soon as possible. But, something always happens that causes us to move to the next issue, whether, whatever it is. So.
Well, I would say Capital One was equity investor in 4 transactions this year that had VHDA debt. The first one we got our preliminary approval for was the one that got moved and closed in September. The other 3 did close in May, a 9-4 twinning deal and just a bond deal. So you just never know what's going to trip one of these deals up. But they were fortunate that when you were able to go back to market later in the year, they got a pretty good rate on that latter deal.
So Ryan, I think one other thing you wanted to hit on kind of in this initial round before we turn to some questions, and I think this will be something that Ed, Sherry, and I each do in turn, but sort of why finance with Virginia Housing. And I'll just hit this relatively quickly, but obviously the non-recourse portion is important. When applications are completed thoroughly and good sets of construction documents come in, we can process loans very rapidly. We can get them through the process when they're ready very quickly. And along with that, sort of once you're in the Virginia Housing Program, there's a great deal of consistency that comes with that cradle to grave relationship. And when times look particularly bleak in the April-May timeframe, I think Virginia Housing's response was sort of very consistent with what you get in that relationship with Virginia Housing. Our focus is Virginia, so we have a very clear mission and are invested in the mission of affordable housing, and so that consistent touch all the way through the life of the loan, I think, is very important. More mundane, when it comes to the construction to perm program, it's nice to have a single closing and then a very simple conversion to the permanent loan when construction is complete. And last but not least, the creativity that our success has afforded us through the REACH program and the resources that makes available, that we've been able to reinvest and buy down interest rates on rental housing loans, to be active and responsive in Northern Virginia to the Amazon HQ arrival. Those are all the things that come with a well-run organization like Virginia Housing.
Yeah, that was one of the things. I had somebody call me in maybe July or August asking me if VHDA was doing anything to help out deals that were having trouble with tenants not paying the rent, that kind of thing. And I said, well, did you get your VHDA loan, get your loan through VHDA, which I already knew the answer. And he said, no. And I said, then no. I said, but if you got your loan through VHDA, they have a policy and they're doing stuff to help people. And that is the one thing. When times get hard, VHDA is there to help, is the way I always think about it, tell people about it.
So real quick, I would just also plug great work being done in the Commonwealth through the rent and mortgage relief program. Virginia Housing obviously is involved in helping get those resources out on the landlord side, but hopefully everybody is aware of that program, and that applies not just for Virginia Housing loans, but all multifamily renters.
Right. All right, Sherry, we're going to go to you, but right before that, Susan wrote me a note here and said, everybody's here just to listen to you, David. She didn't make them come in the room with you. So she said, they all like to hear you speak. All right, Sherry, I thought she was going to say me, but she didn't. All right, Sherry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was just going to speak briefly about FHA and kind of different aspects of the processing there. Touch on the pilot program, and then kind of touch on any, some timing, the timing that we're seeing now, and kind of what HUD's and our appetites are geared up for right now during this weird time that we're all in. And so I'll just go ahead and start with that. HUD does have the new pilot program for the new construction or sub rehab. They created this in an effort, most people probably know about this, but I'll just give a brief overview, and then if there are any additional questions, I can certainly answer them. But they created this to have a streamlined process for to further align the D4 program and the 220 program with the programmatic requirements of most LIHTC programs that we see. There was a little bit of a disalignment prior, and so they're trying to get these more in aligned so that we can process these quicker. We know that there are deadlines that must be hit on low-income housing tax credit projects, and so this is an effort to try to get these transactions through the processing at HUD a little bit quicker than your typical market rate D4 transactions. In an effort to do that, they do have designated pilot underwriters in various offices around the nation that once you submit the application to HUD, it is assigned to one of these designated underwriters whose goal is to get back to the lender within 5 days with any kind of deficiencies they might see up front, so that can be resolved on the front end and get this moving through the process. Also, they are accepting, like if you have a concept meeting with HUD on these types of transactions, they'll begin accepting early deliverables prior to the full application being submitted. This helps on the timing process because housing is who reviews the application, and then there's asset management that also has to get involved with review of some of the exhibits, specifically with the management agents, et cetera. And so having some of these early deliverables submitted ahead of time, ahead of the application, ahead of when your plans and costs and everything are ready, allows housing to kind of put some pressure on asset management to get their review done quicker in order to get our commitments out quicker. So the goal here is that HUD will be able to close a transaction 90 days, within 90 days of receipt of the full application. So not of the early deliverables, but kind of what David was saying. It's like when we have a complete application, then that starts the clock. You can't start sending in pieces and expect to close 90 days from the first piece of information that's submitted, but HUD is trying very hard to adhere to this. Even if a LIHTC project doesn't go through the pilot program, so if it doesn't qualify for the pilot program, HUD is still giving priority to your affordable transactions. So they're still getting assigned to underwriters sooner than maybe a market rate transaction would be assigned. And so while the processing times at HUD right now outside of the pilot program have increased significantly, that's just due to sheer volume. I mean, we are seeing so much volume from both refinances, new construction, sub rehabs. We're seeing all-time records right now in amount of volume. So the HUD underwriters, as you can imagine, are very busy and are backed up, and so we are seeing some delays on the processing of non-pilot applications. So if the project doesn't qualify for the pilot, it's probably going to take it a little bit longer to get through that process and get to closing. The majority of the delays that we are seeing are at HUD, and like I said, that's outside of the pilot. But the reason why the volume is so great right now is because interest rates for FHA deals are incredibly low. You're looking at, and similar to the Virginia housing programs, all of our deals are fully amortizing at 40 years for your new construction sub rehab. They're non-recourse. You lock your interest rate at initial closing. Right now, interest rates are around 290-ish. So that's extremely low for a 40-year mortgage. And so we're just seeing a lot of volume due to those interest rates being so low. We are, ever since COVID, I think everybody's probably doing this, but I mean, we are having to manage the process a little bit differently due to COVID. At the beginning, site inspections were a little difficult for our third parties, getting into units, being able to travel. That's kind of leveling out a little bit. So we aren't seeing as many delays on the third parties as we were at the very beginning of COVID. We've kind of worked all the kinks out. But we are managing that process a little bit differently. Now, on the time to close, I said, they're trying to shoot for the 90 days after the project is delivered to HUD, after the application is delivered to HUD. Now, timing to get that application delivered to HUD really is dependent on the thing that we see that holds our applications up the most are plans and costs. If we don't have a complete set of plans, or the contractors sometimes right now are taking a little bit longer on cost just because it's hard to get subs. Everybody's super busy. It's hard to get those costs in a timely manner. And so those are some of the delays that we're seeing. I think for now, I'll kind of stop there. And then if we hit on some of the other topics that I had in my notes, I can come back to that. But maybe that's just a good overview to get us started. And then I can chime in on some of the other questions as they relate to FHA and HUD.
Okay, Sherry, I had a question. The interest rate, is that the all-in rate, or is there other stuff added on?
So that is the rate, and then there's also your 25 basis points MIP.
Okay. Just want to be fair to you, David.
You're right. You're right.
I'm sure everybody's all excited. 2.9%.
I know.
All right, Ed, take her away.
Well, thanks. Quick question for you, Sherry. Before I jump in, 9-4-20 deals eligible for the pilot. I'm working on a deal north of the river here, and I was told that they are not. Has that changed?
So, interesting question. We were talking about 9-4 deals recently, and really there are some bugs that we have to work out with those and with HUD, and trying to get them to fit well within the HUD program. It's kind of like trying to put a round peg in a square hole. So we are trying to work out some bugs there. We've seen the majority of the 9-4 deals going to other agency executions. So I don't think that they will fit with the pilot program.
Okay, because
Right now.
that's what they told us. We're actually doing one FHA, or two, because
Right.
you said square peg and a round hole. I look at it as trying to put 2 pegs in 1 hole.
It's like a
Because-
star-shaped peg. We're trying to get into this. We're squeezing a round peg in this thing like that.
Yeah, so what we have done, kind of jumping into the middle of what I was going to talk about, but as I mentioned earlier, we do balance sheet loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA. In most instances outside of Virginia, when we've done a 9-4 twinning deal or a bond deal, we've done them. In the old days, we actually did a private placement. We bought the bonds on a bond deal. For the 9-4s, we've been doing them with Freddie Mac, where we will have a bank construction loan and a Freddie Mac unfunded forward for the 9% deal, and then a tax exempt loan and a Freddie Mac tax exempt loan for the perm. That works depending upon where the issuers are, and that can work in Virginia when David's busy doing other things. But it only works where you really have a very active and sophisticated bond issuer. Places where we have done them, we've done them in Loudoun County. We've looked at a couple deals in Arlington County. Arlington IDA issues bonds, and we've done Freddie Mac TELs there. We haven't done a 9-4 twinning there because usually David comes in with real cheap money and beats us up. And Norfolk Redevelopment Housing Authority is also a good bond issuer. So there are other executions to make your 9-4 twinning deal and to make your bond deal work. We've done in other states. We've also done Fannie Mae MTEBs, which is a very low rate, nearly as low as FHA. Cost of issuance are higher than a Freddie Mac TEL, so we typically see those on very large deals where the cost of issuance gets spread out because there's a certain amount that's just basic cost that makes that execution not work for a smaller, deal under $10 million or so. So we have found that the Freddie Mac TEL is very, very effective. It's very quick execution, faster than FHA. Cost of issuance are low, and it works very well in coordination with other soft monies from the state or the counties or the cities, wherever we're doing it. And it is a very good tool to have. But one thing I think I'd say about Capital One is we would love to do every piece of the deal, the equity, the construction loan, the perm loan, but we're really pro deal. When a developer comes to us and wants to talk about a particular execution, we're not wedded to one execution. We've done a lot of deals where VHDA has been the bond lender, and we've been, we may have done like on the 9-4 twinning deals, I think we've done 7 in Virginia, and 5 of them I think were VHDA deals, where we were the construction lender on the 9, and VHDA was the perm lender, and VHDA was the construction perm bond lender. We've done transactions where we are the construction lender on a 9 with VHDA taking us out, or else we can do that perm execution. Might be a Freddie Mac execution on a 9% transaction. Smaller deal, we'll do a balance sheet loan. So we really try to look at what works best for that transaction. And part of our seminar here, our little webinar, is the one size does not fit all. I think having multiple options and multiple execution options is really the way to make sure that the developer gets the best execution that works for their transaction. And we're, like I said, we're happy to work with VHDA. We're happy to work with FHA to make that deal work the best. In fact, I did a transaction a couple of years ago in immediate funding for Freddie Mac tell where I actually worked myself out of a job. I was looking at doing the equity, and then I decided I'd rather be in the debt. And then we decided it didn't need a construction loan. And next thing I know, I'm just a bystander where our agency group did the Freddie execution. But there's always more than one way to skin a cat, and we're happy to work with our partners to try to figure out the best way to do it.
You said that the Freddie Mac closes quickly. What are we talking about? What kind of time frame? Start application to close?
Well, not counting right now, because just like HUD and probably David, everybody's backed up. For a 9% transaction, you can get it done in 90 days or less, 60 days. For an actually for a acquisition rehab, non-LIHTC, a preservation deal, they can definitely be done in under 60 days. Sometimes even we've seen them quicker, but nobody, we don't want to promise that. Usually when we're doing something with Freddie Mac, and even though Freddie Mac is a prior approval lender, as opposed to Fannie Mae, where we're the delegated underwriter servicer, when we're doing a bond execution or 9-4, or we're doing something that has multiple capital sources, I've never had Freddie be the thing that slowed us up. It's usually one of the other executions. It's the issuer, the soft money, trying to put all the pieces together. And like I said, we've done some in Maryland, where I think we had 6, 7, 8 capital sources with Freddie Mac as the senior lender, and on the bond, with the state issuing the bonds, we buy the tax exempt loan, and we managed to fit all the different pieces together.
That's usually the case also with VHGA. I tell people usually the holdup is the developer not submitting something that we needed on time or even in time for anything, and that holds us up. So yeah, we end up that. I had a question. We were just slipped my mind. It was well, now I've lost it. It'll come back to me. It was something Sherry said. Oh, underwriters. When you submit to the pilot and you get an underwriter assigned in a region, does it depend on which region I submit the application in, or is it could go to California or whatever?
Typically, they like to keep them in the region where the application is submitted. I have had one that went to a different region just because of workload, but typically they like to keep them in the region where the application is.
Is it where the deal is, or where the
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So if I'm working on something in Georgia and my broker is in Maryland, it's going to go to Georgia region to be done. Is that the way?
Wherever the property is actually located.
Okay. All right. So I was wondering if you thought there was a better underwriter, could you submit it somewhere else to get it?
That would be awesome.
Be all overloaded in one zone, I guess. But yeah. I'm sure they're all great.
They are all great.
Okay. Anybody have anything? Anybody have any questions? Absolutely nobody. Now, Susan did say she'd like to see all of us too, so she was being very nice. But anybody have any questions out there? I know we got the whole place is packed with VHA staff. Eric Hoffman was here, which makes me a little nervous. He's there, but I'm sure he's not paying attention. So I had a question. Let's talk about 9-4s for a minute. We've all had some experience with them. David, we had an experience where we had a developer trying to close them separately with VHGA, and we had trouble. We're trying to explain to them that it probably wasn't a good idea. The tax credit requirement is that the 4% has to be closed. You have to close it by a certain time, or else you're going to lose the 9% credits. So the big concern is that if someone doesn't, you could close the 9 and then all of a sudden never do the 4, and the credits would be gone and there would be a problem. We worked through that a little bit because of coronavirus, but we haven't gotten to where we're closing those deals anyway. But can you talk about closing the 9-4s together and why you like to do it now? Also, if we have one building, of course we have to close them together. You can't close half the building and then have the other half standing on an unclosed piece. But we're talking about 2 pieces on separate lots.
So I think talking a little bit generally about 9-4s first, just, and you did a good job of sort of walking through the program. It seems new, but it's kind of actually moved from being, the first go. I remember doing a deal. I think Wexford Manor was the first 9-4, and it was challenging to do, but it was relatively straightforward. And things then began to morph. I often joke, if anybody knows the kids' book, If You Give a Pig a Party, if you've ever read that to a kid, it's about this effect. If you in the book, you give the pig the party, and then the pig wants decorations and wants to invite friends, and big things get bigger and bigger. And so there's an analogy here. The 9-4 has really evolved. In some cases, you could argue mutated, to become more complex, because affordable housing deals are difficult to do. We're trying to stretch limited resources. And so, a lot of that creativity has been on the credit side, and often done without really thinking about what the impact might be on the lending side. Because ultimately, this is a panel about debt and lending, and we're concerned about our security in most cases non-recourse situations. So what we have are the built, hopefully the built assets. And so I think a couple things. In the very beginning, you're right. The impact of not having the 4% move forward to the 9% was disastrous. That's maybe not as significant now, still a significant penalty, but not the same as the credits going away. But the reality is, in most cases, even if it's not a single building, the deals are intertwined, particularly through construction, right? There are often, roads or ingress and egress pathways that are important, to both sides of the transaction. So just, I guess, as a practical matter, it's very rare that you've seen a set of circumstances between, things like ground leases, cross easements, shared use agreements, all those sorts of things. For the most part, it just makes sense for the deals to go together. I think, a second part to that is, now that we are pricing our taxable debt in these scheduled manners and not pricing in real time, that probably adds a little bit more challenge to things. So, I guess I would say, in the right set of circumstances, we would certainly price a 4% ahead of pricing the 9%, because that's really what the trigger is for us. We're often, not closing deals together, because on the 9% deals, we're often just a takeout, for example. So I think, as much as anything, the fact patterns tend to suggest these deals just belong going together.
Yeah, I did one deal where it was, we closed the 4 and then did the 9 close later, or was supposed to close later. And so in that event, actually the 9 never closed because it had problems, but we already had the 4 and everything was fine.
Right, no detrimental effect.
Right, right. So, Ed, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, we worked on a transaction, David, you guys were in it as well, where there was a reason why we wanted to close the 9 first. There were 2 buildings, both being raised, but one couldn't be torn down for 2 more months. There were some issues with when that was originally built, and we had scheduled to close them separately. And we ended up delaying them to close the 9 and 4 together. But a lot of times, even if you close them together, we often want to finish the 9 first, because the 9 may have a placed in service issue. You might have 9 credits might need to be delivered, and you don't have the placed in service issue with the bonds with the 4% credits. So, and you also mentioned Wexford Manor. We had a situation there where there are 2 buildings. They were lengthwise down the site, where the 9 was closest to the road and the 4 was behind, and for a number of reasons, placed in service and a few other to get tenants relocated back. We wanted to finish the 9 first, but we hadn't completed all the shared facilities. We hadn't completed the parking lot. We hadn't completed all the landscaping. So we had to work out a kind of complicated escrow to make sure that the money was available so we could close out that contract on the 9% deal, get a certificate of occupancy, get the people in, and yet still have that money available, the contribution from the 9% side to that shared facility. So there's nothing you can't do with a lot of creative people to make these things work, and the lawyers love it because it's a lot of work. And on a 9-4 twinning deal, you seem to have twice as many lawyers as you do on one deal, even though it's supposedly the same firms. But we don't have an issue personally on not closing the 9 first and then the 4. In many cases in Virginia, our 4% deal is either the same size or smaller than the 9. Now, once again, in Maryland, the way the programs work there, usually the 9s are much smaller than the 4s. And in that case, given that you're building maybe 60 units in a 9 and 120 in a 4, you really want to close those at the same time just to get everything coordinated.
One of the things I did, this goes into tax credits, but I get people all the time calling me going, how do I close these 9? Everybody thinks a 9-4 is the only way to go now. And so I get people calling me saying, we got to do a 9-4. How do I make it work? And how are these people doing it? And I explained to them that a lot of the 4s have other, county money in it. It's not like we're just straight they can be done anywhere. They can't be done anywhere. Unless you have some kind of help or you buy the property cheaper. Something has to be different than your normal deal. Just because you're doing a 9-4 and you win the credits as a 9-4 doesn't mean the financing is there for the 4.
Right.
So
you need a county or city
Yeah.
that can put significant soft funds in, because you're obviously with 4%, you're getting about 30% of the credits that you get in a 9% deal with the current credit rate. And you have to push that perm debt a little bit, but there's still a gap. So you need a willing subordinate lender in a county or a state or both sometimes.
Right. And the other thing is I don't want people, I'm sure JD doesn't want people winning the 9s and then not being able to even think about doing the 4, thinking, oh, we'll win the 9 and then we'll worry about putting the 4 together later and finding where we can get Ed to give us extra money, or VHA will just give us more reach funds if we need it, because that's not going to happen. I need people to get real here. So I feel like, what's his name? Dr. Phil, you need to get real. All right. So I've jumped off topic again. Anybody have any questions? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at all you guys. I know y'all are really interested. Eric's eating a panini. I can see him there on the camera. So
Eric does have a question.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, well, or maybe it's a comment. He said, we have seen an exponential increase in ground lease financing in Virginia in recent years. Do your loans work with leasehold financing, and in particular, when the lease is senior to the loan and does not terminate on a foreclosure?
Geez, can we get a lawyer to interpret the question?
Yeah, he goes pretty deep.
David, you want to go first? Or you want me?
Sure. So I would say a couple things. Any statement that's made here is not an absolute statement. Each deal is, its own animal and has its own fact pattern. So these comments are all general. Generally speaking, I can say that Virginia Housing has amended its policy on financing leasehold interests. We will do an unsubordinated, we will finance on an unsubordinated ground lease under certain very specific, and I'm not going to get into the details of them in this discussion, but specific criteria have to be met by the lease. But I guess this gets back to sort of, again, all the push points in the transactions. And as a lender, we still have to be prudent lenders. The reason that we're able to offer the REACH program is because we've managed a successful loan portfolio with minimal losses, and we've maintained a really solid bond rating. And so that impacts our cost of funds also. So, the things we do have to be prudent. And so we'll look at those transactions, but they've got to underwrite, they've got to make sense, and it just shouldn't be assumed that there's carte blanche to do that. And that shouldn't be the place that you start your negotiation.
And just because, Eric, you heard it done on one deal doesn't mean every deal is going to get done just because they did it one place. So everyone needs to know that. Every deal is different. Such circumstances are different.
So I feel like Ed is right here to my side, but I want to hear.
I know.
While I'm speaking, may I have a little hot coffee, David? Anyway, yeah, we did a transaction in Northern Virginia a couple of years ago, had what I would call a true economic ground lease. Most of the ground leases we do, obviously we love it when they're subordinate. We love it when any payment is below the line, or it's maybe there's an upfront lease payment that is really the same as a sales price, and then either $1 a year or something like that. But we did a transaction with a real economic ground payment. It was based on like a 5% imputed value of the land, 5% of the imputed value of the land. So we made it work. We worked with Freddie Mac, who was a lot of lawyers trying to get everybody comfortable, from the senior lender, which was me during construction as a construction lender, as well as the equity, and we had the county involved as well. But it can work. It makes people like Eric rich. He wasn't in the deal though, and but we really have to work very hard, and we have to make sure that the economics on that transaction work. And so where it's not going to probably work in a transaction that's very low skewed rents, because you just don't have enough NOI and you don't have a growing NOI. So if you have a transaction that's primarily 60% AMI rents, and maybe certainly most deals in Northern Virginia that might have 60% AMI rents in 60s and 50s is going to have a growing net operating income over time. But if you have a property where you have very low skewed rents, a lot of 30%, 40% units, and you have actually a declining NOI, that makes those very challenging to make sure that you can get comfortable that you might not have a ground lease failure based on economics, much less any other non-economic defaults.
I want to jump for a second to something that Sherry said back a few minutes ago, a while ago. You were talking about getting plans and construction documents in and getting the numbers in, and sometimes that holds up the deal. I get complaints time to time. People say, well, VHA's construction guidelines are too strict and they are looking over our deal, and I can go somewhere else and not have that problem. At HUD, do they look over the construction documents? Do I need to get them in on time? Do I have some architect looking over them and making comments? How does that process work?
Yeah, so before we send the construction documents to HUD, right, before we send the plans, the cost to HUD, obviously we have a third-party reviewer to review those. Typically, once our third-party reviewer reviews and approves, we don't have any issues with HUD. It's rare for them to come back and have a lot of comments on the construction documents. We try to get them in good shape before we send them in the first place. So we don't typically get a lot of comments from HUD on the construction documents during the processing of the application.
Ed, do you have any issues?
We do a pretty thorough plan and cost review. We have our third-party consultant, as well as our in-house construction risk management, and usually in partnership with the development risk management people from the equity side. They're all scrubbing those documents. We're looking at the GC contract, depending upon the transaction, maybe major sub buyouts, as well as the plans and specs. And we want to close with a final set of plans. So we can begin our process probably sooner maybe than Sherry with a bid set or maybe even something else, but we can't get final approval until we have that final set of docs.
What about contracts and construction documents and legal documents? Does HUD allow you to change those? VHA says, these are the documents you get. You can't change them. Do you have that same thing going on?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, the construction contract is a HUD document, and for the most part, they're regulatory. So there's a few changes that are allowable, but not. They don't like to see many changes at all, if any, in the construction and legal documents.
I have a question here from someone, Mike Griffin, asked if there are any challenges as far as doing deals in urban metro areas as opposed to rural areas. Anybody have any comments about, that was
I mean, we've done deals in all types of areas. We don't usually have too many challenges with one or the other. Ed, you might have a different experience.
Rural deals, the challenge generally is, does the deal work financially, feasibly? Do the numbers work, and is there a sustainable income to support that loan throughout the term, as well as any potential refinance or recapitalization? Most of our loans, unlike the FHA loans, are not fully amortizing loans. They're like 15, 18-year term on a 35 to 40-year AM. So, there is a recapitalization anticipated after the end of the compliance period, and we want to make sure that there's enough there to be able to take out that loan. Urban deals have lots of other challenges. Everybody has their finger in the pie, in the counties and the cities looking at the documents. Permitting takes a long time generally. And then you have, if you have the more, the higher cost areas tend to have more subordinate sources, and then that means there's more people looking at the deal, the state, the county, the city, whoever has their money in the deal. And then we also have the other unique challenge to things in the DC metro region, whether it's Maryland, DC, or Virginia, is the utilities. Just when you think you have everything knocked, the utility company says, yeah, I know someone signed off on that plan back then, but I didn't sign off on it, and I want you to redo that vault or this or that. So yeah, those are our urban challenges.
Yep. And just to kind of piggyback there, talking about the economic, issues maybe of some of the rural deals. Most of our rural deals that have tax credits also have some other kind of rent subsidy that goes along with them, so that the HAP contract or something that kind of takes some pressure off there as far as ensuring, that the rents are going to be there. So that's another layer of a rural deal, I guess, that we see a lot.
David, do you have any special things for rural deals at VHA? And can you talk about the Section 8 rent subsidy, how you underwrite the vouchers?
Yeah, so a couple things on deals now that have rural development rent subsidies, and on projects that have vouchers on the entire property, we will underwrite or we'll look at the voucher rents in our underwriting, which is a little bit of a change. We may only underwrite part of the overhang, but we will consider it, which is a little bit more aggressive than we used to be. Stepping back a little bit, I would just say, one of the other challenges in affordable deals, when you've got area median incomes that are so much lower in the rural areas, even if you're applying some kind of growth rate to that, it's not moving in real dollars the same way that things tend to move in the more urban areas. And so in the urban areas, obviously land costs reflect this, but you're able to overcome a lot via density. And a lot of the localities have been aggressive in their policy in incentivizing density boost for increased affordable units. So that's another sort of non-monetary way that's been supported. I think the second part of your question I didn't answer.
Yes. You're not going to?
You can re-ask it, please.
You're not going to answer the question, Mr. Glassman? Is there a problem?
I think you forgot the second part. I did too.
Oh, the second part was vouchers. How does VHA underwrite vouchers? If somebody gets 10 vouchers on a 100-unit deal, or 20 vouchers on a 100-unit deal, are you underwriting the overhang?
Yeah, we'll underwrite the 10 vouchers on the overhang. I think there's a threshold on the 9% credits. I can't remember. It's the greater of 5 or 10%. So we'll underwrite that in a 9% deal.
You'll underwrite, the 10%. All right. I was just hoping you were going to say you'd underwrite 20%. I'd take that too. What do you do, Ed, when y'all underwrite all the voucher overhangs, or?
Let me make sure I understand. You're talking project-based vouchers,
Yep.
not tenant vouchers.
Yep.
What we look at is how much overhang there is. And we're looking at two things. We're looking at overhang, how much that overhang is over the, say, the tax credit rent, and whether or not there's actually a projected deficit if we were to lose that subsidy, say, after year 5. And if there's no deficit, if we were to lose the subsidy and the transaction would still pencil out throughout year 15, then we don't worry about it at all. If there is a deficit, we look at the magnitude of that deficit over that period of time, say years 11 through 15, and if it's under a certain percentage, we still go forward. And that would be the percentage usually that's covered by, say, our operating deficit reserve.
Right. And somebody wanted me to clarify, VHA, I guess about a year ago, started underwriting the overhang on the Section 8 on 10% of the units. Before that, they didn't underwrite any overhang on vouchers, project-based vouchers. We're not talking about the Section 8, project-based Section 8, but just on the vouchers themselves that we have to get with the tax credit application. So it's kind of align those two deals together.
And by the way, my answer was with respect also to the equity. Typically, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, if you have a 20-year HAP contract, for the perm side, they just look at it as they underwrite it, period.
All right, well, we've got a few seconds here left. Does anybody have any questions to finish this up? Anybody out there? This is your last chance to ask a question.
I'm sure if you really need one, Eric would be happy to get one together.
Oh, well, he's already had enough. Okay. It's like the time I was at a national convention on a panel and Jim Chandler was out in the audience and there were probably 600 people in the room. He raised his hand. I was working for Jim. He raised his hand and wanted to ask a question. And I said, no. I said, I've been waiting all my life to be able to say this. No, Jim, you're not going to ask another question. Jim would ask a lot of questions. He was
Great. Well, we have reached time. So thank you guys so much for joining us. A lot of information. I'm still learning a lot about all of this. So I might have a headache by the end of the day, but it's okay. So we're going to have a break. And then after the break, there are 2 more sessions that you can join. At 1 o'clock, we have both the Structuring Creative and Durable Ventures and also Year 15 Opportunities and The Enemy Within. Do you know who your partner is? So after the break, feel free to join either one of those sessions. And thank you again, panelists.
Thank you. The Enemy Within, that's a little scary. That bothers me. All right, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How do I get out of the room? I don't want to leave.